Hi, welcome everyone. This is Manish Sharma, your host, and I want to thank everyone who has joined us in this webinar today on a very hot, red hot topic, which everyone seems to be talking about, which is generative AI. Of course, we are going to talk about a specific area of generative AI, specific scope, but we are going to start from a broad perspective and then go narrow. I have with me my co-panelist Josh O'Brien and Tracy Vo. Um, uh, so before we get started, I'm going to give you a brief introduction about three of us. So I am COO of Resolve.ai and have been working in this space for for quite a few years now. And as part of our product, we launch new technologies, new innovations in the area of service desk. My co-panelists include Tracy, who has a background in product and innovation, both in large financial institutions and also at startups. She's leads our growth team and takes our new solutions and innovations and bring them to our clients. I also have Josh with me. Josh leads our technology innovation group, and we call him our mad scientist. He and our tech team are responsible for doing some cutting edge research in up and coming technologies, and obviously generative AI has been on our mind, to say the least, for last few months. 4 months since it all started, Josh.
It's been around for a long time, but I think it really exploded with ChatGPT coming onto the scenes and kind of bringing it mainstream in a easy to use way for people that maybe don't code or had never heard of it. So generative AI itself has been around for a few years, but it was brought to the mainstream 4 months ago. Yes.
That's right. I mean, it suddenly become part of our consciousness 4 months ago, and I think we are all, like I'm saying, humanity at large. And sure, I'm using that word as with the, I'm sure someone somewhere in some village is not paying attention to it, but a lot of people are paying a lot of attention to it um, uh, right now and for last few months. Um, so let's just start by asking you one question. We all kind of know what ChatGPT is, but can you help us define what generative AI is, if there's a way to define that and kind of, put this in a nice little, definition?
Yeah, for sure. I can answer that. So um, I like to define generative AI in simple terms, right? So think about taking something and training it on a large amount of, just for simplicity, examples, right? So you say, here's a bunch of examples. This is what I want you to do. And by the way, you can take these examples and then create something new from it. I just want something similar to this, right? So it's the ability to take um, a large set of data and then generate something completely new off of it. You can compare it maybe to a guitarist, right? When they're first learning how to play the guitar, they're learning chord progressions, they're learning rhythm, and they're learning through other songs. And then they can play those same songs, right? But then one day they can write their own songs. The guitarist can come up with their own music, and that's kind of how generative AI works. You teach it how to do something, it learns patterns, um, it recognizes, in the terms of the guitarist, rhythm, and then it can make its own song. So I think that's an easy way to explain it.
Yeah, and don't we have a definition of Forrester? I'm going to put this definition, which Forrester has put publicly out here as well, which defines generative AI as a set of technologies and technique that you know leverages massive corpus of data, including large language models, etc., etc. So this is the formal definition, and of course, Josh, thank you for explaining that to us in a simple enough way. So Tracy, I have a question for you. So in terms of a lot of companies were using traditional or classical AI. It's so funny. Till 4 months ago, that was the cutting edge, right? We're talking to people. We had something that was so phenomenal because that was a cutting edge. And then ChatGPT came and generative AI came, and everyone's business model and what they thought is cutting edge changed overnight, right? So if there is a way to compare the classical from the generative, how would you do that?
Yeah, and we have some stuff on screen here, but I also want to talk about the pros and cons of traditional AI versus generative AI. So traditional AI is very focused on keywords and pattern recognition, and it doesn't have that generative AI ability, right? It doesn't have the ability to generate new knowledge, but it's able to detect those patterns and provide you answers based on keywords. So, one of the pros of traditional AI is that you can get an exact scripted answer that you want, word for word. If you put into the, question and answer format, you can have the exact answer you want. And that's really good, especially if you have a frequently asked questions section of your website where, it was written, with your team, to put out the word for word answer. And so that's one pro of traditional AI. The other pro is that the speed of the response is almost instant when you're typing in a certain question and you get an answer almost instantly. While generative AI does take time to generate the answer, depending on how long the answer is, because it's actually typing out that answer. So it may not seem instant, but it's really quick in terms of the types of answer it's getting for you. Generative AI can show you an excerpt from an article. It can point you to the source of the article as well. But when it comes to the con of traditional AI, it does take time to build up your knowledge base. It does take time to maintain that knowledge base because there's a lot of tagging you have to do, a lot of labeling that you have to do in order to get the answer that you want.
Yeah, and I think the classical or traditional AI that everyone had till 4 months ago was pretty good. It was a huge upgrade on what was before that, right? I mean, before that you had SharePoint or some place where you manage your knowledge articles, and you have no way of upgrading. So traditional or classical AI was an upgrade on that. But I think as big a leap as that was, I think generative AI is as big a leap as well. And that brings me, just a quick thing about what are we going to talk about here, right? So, like I said, we are going to go wide and then we are going to go narrow. So, we are going to talk about generative AI, but we are going to then finally go and focus on the use cases as it relates to employee support and employee, service desk more effectively, right? Like you can call it service desk, you can call it employee support. That's the space that we are going to talk about. So a big component of that is knowledge, right? Knowledge management. And that also is one of the most obvious use case, right? Everyone thinks generative AI today. First thing that comes to their mind is, hey, I have this tons of documents lying around somewhere. And the question is, can these questions be trained on a ChatGPT like generative model? Because we know that ChatGPT, the traditional ChatGPT, the older one, I'm not talking the one on Azure, it's trained on certain knowledge up to September 2021 or something like that. So Josh, this question is for you. Do you want to take our audience through, how will this model look for them if they have tons of documents or, whatever they have? How does this work?
Yeah, so it's kind of a game changer, right? We could take knowledge from multiple sources, whether that's a SharePoint library, a document library, a website that has public information, an on-premise file server, really anywhere you have documents, and we could take this and use it to form answers based on generative AI. And the cool thing is that we can pull relevant data from many documents to form one answer. So if you've got 3 or 4 different documents that the answer to a question that was asked, it would benefit the end user to have information from all of those documents. We can actually take that information from 4 or 5 different documents in 4 or 5 different locations and use it to form a comprehensive answer. And so there's never been anything like that before, right? You've kind of had where you could search it based on keywords and you could get relevant documents, and then you click through the document and then you scroll through the document and maybe it was on page 62, right? And what we can do is we can take, this little blurb from page 62 of one document on SharePoint and combine it with relevant information from, page 27 of a PDF on a file share and give a comprehensive answer. And it's some of the coolest technology I've ever seen. It's really good answers.
And Tracy, I have a question for you. So, can there be multiple departments here? So, for example, if I have HR and I have IT and that kind of stuff, can we have different departments also? In this particular page, I think it's written that You can also train it on generic IT knowledge, right? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the AI is smart enough to be able to ingest source documents, whether where the topic they are, whether they're IT or HR or facilities, wherever your existing knowledge sits. You'll want to you want to point it to the most updated information, whether it's in your SharePoint folder or site or a URL in your internet or internet pages. The AI can learn from there. If you upload documents, it learns instantly. And we also trained it with a lot of IT knowledge already, so it should be able to answer most IT questions. We pointed those sources to trusted and curated sources that are updated frequently, and that they're written for the end user, the enterprise end user. So you get things that are easy to understand by the end user, and things that they shouldn't things that they shouldn't be doing, like trying to hack a firewall, for example.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of understanding of different, like, context switching, with the different departments that it learns from, that kind of
Yeah,
knowledge.
so as a matter of fact, a lot of people ask that how will you make sure that the bot does not give an answer which is incorrect, right? Or how will the bot um, not give an answer? For example, if the answer is meant for me, right, versus for you, can it be personalized, right? Those are the kind of things, and how do you make sure that it does not go outside certain guardrails, so to say? So, Josh, do you want to throw some light on how does this thing work? Sure, it can give great answers from the content, that you provided, but does it also not provide answers that it is not supposed to give? Right? How does that work, Josh? You want to walk us through this a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, the technology behind it really comes down to the prompt engineering. I'm sure you guys have heard that term before, but it's really tricky to be able to get a language model to not give you an answer that's just completely false, right? Or maybe not relevant to your company. You may, if you use a VPN, right? We all know there's 1,000 different VPNs, and there's 1,000 different ways to configure them. So those answers have to be really specific to your organization. And if you go to, for example, ChatGPT, I think when we think of generative AI, we think of ChatGPT. If you go there and say, how I can't connect to the VPN, right? One, it's not going to know what kind of VPN you're using. Two, even if it does, I mean, gosh, there's a million different ways to configure a FortiClient VPN, right? And so you're going to get 10 times out of 10, that answer is going to be wrong. And so what we can do is we can take your curated knowledge on that stuff, and how you've configured it, what's specific to your organization, and tell these language models, like, look, I know you're really smart. I don't need you to be smart in this situation. I just need you to answer questions based off this data. And it's tricky, but we've figured it out. So.
And Tracy, do you mind going back to the slide? I want to talk about something there. The sequencing of steps, right? So where do you go look for the knowledge first, and where do you go look for the knowledge second, right? So I think the way we are doing, at least I can't speak for the rest of the industry, we can look for scripted knowledge first, right? Where you want it to give precisely right answer, right? Exactly the answer that you want it to give. It can go look there, then it can go look for the documents that you uploaded, and then it can go look for generic AI IT knowledge, right? So the sequencing is also, it's nuanced, right? Because you need to look for answer somewhere, and if you don't find it, then go find somewhere else, and then if you don't find it, then go find. I think that's also another nuance that can help put this picture complete, so to say. All right, let's talk about hallucinations, my favorite topic. So and I'm not talking about this me after one too many drinks on an evening, but what's hallucination going on? Josh, you want to throw some light on it, and how do you prevent one, right? I think everyone would want to know that.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on that in the last question, but a hallucination is when a large language model gives a conventionally wrong answer, right? It's like a really good liar. And if you don't know exactly, if you're not almost an expert in what it's talking about, you're going to be fooled by it. I've been fooled by it. Think about, like, you have an article that, and a simple example would be to explain to an end user how to sign out of Adobe, right? And it says, okay, click file, and then click help, and then click options, and then click sign out, right? And it's very specific. It sounds convincing, but there's no options under help, right? It just made that up. And that is extremely frustrating to an end user that's trying to get help when they're given wrong information. I like to compare it to like that classic IT technician that doesn't know how to say, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? They just like give you a bunch of
generic
word I can't say, right, on stuff that they have no idea what they're talking about, and it's convincing. So it's you got to be careful with hallucinations, right? And we do a very good job of presenting that, because we don't allow the model to use its own training data to answer questions. It's only based off. We can, right, if that's something that you want to happen, like if you're open to that, we can open that up. It's but we say like, hey dude, this is all you're allowed to answer questions on, right? Is these documents right here? Don't go anywhere else. And it's tricky, but it took us a lot of hours to get there, but we've got there. So
very interesting. I heard over the weekend I was reading the news, and there was this ChatGPT made up some case for some lawyer. So there's some lawyer who's smartly used ChatGPT to present for some case, and he was citing some other prior cases. I think that's how it works over there. And apparently ChatGPT has just made cases that were not even real. It says this versus that, and in so and so case, and it was not correct, right? So
legal reference numbers to other cases and all kinds of things that it completely just made up. It's crazy.
That's amazing. So how to manage that is very important, and how to control that is very important, and how to do the right engineering so that it doesn't happen is very important. So this is something that everyone should know about and kind of consider when you're going through this any kind of implementation there. So Tracy, talking about interesting thing, do you want to share any? I know that a lot of our clients are already using it, and in some cases we are reviewing what is being used and not being used. Do you have some interesting stories to tell us where people are using it and how they're using it and what the bot is telling them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, we wanted to solve our own pain point first when we first started the generative AI journey. And one of our, something that took us a lot of time usually is to fill out security assessments, RFPs and security assessments. And so what we did was we trained the bot with our due diligence documents, all the certifications we have, like SOC 2 Type 2, GDPR, HIPAA, ISO, and all that, and all the policies. And so it was able to help us fill out the spreadsheet of, security assessments and due diligence documents in a matter of seconds. So that was a really nice use case for us. It definitely improved our productivity. And then with clients, clients have given us, HR policies, and we were able to ask questions where it was very conversational. Can I wear shorts to the office? Or, I'm frustrated with this policy, things like that. And the bot has been able to answer the questions really well in an empathetic way, also diplomatic, and also ability to cite the source of its information, like which policy, which page is this on, why was it written, summarizing the policy, and go to your manager, HR when needed. And then also, some clients have really dense manual of devices, like medical devices. They're very dense manual, and as humans, even looking at the manual is hard to read and understand and comprehend. So just imagine when a part of the device is broken, you have to go through this manual. So we ingested the manual for a prospect, and use the bot to troubleshoot and basically ask, this part of my device is broken. What do I do? And the bot gave step by step on what to do, troubleshooting steps that were very easy to understand, very digestible. And so that was a huge help.
Yeah. And I remember, Tracy, there are a couple of examples once where someone said, how do I get a raise? And the bot gives a very convincingly nice answer on, very diplomatic, of course. And another one that I remember was we were doing a demo for some Japanese client, and the client just said, okay, I'm going to ask questions to it in Japanese and see what happens. And since then, of course, the bot started answering in Japanese. So language interpretation actually is one of the major upgrades here, because in the traditional model, you had two options. Either you had to store the language knowledge in different languages, or have to live with the quality of Google Translate or Bing Translate, right? Those were the two options that we really had. There was no third option at that point of time, no matter what marketing material of anyone said, right? So now this is much better. This is generating, you can have knowledge in any language, and the answer can be in some other language, right? How phenomenal that is. I really love that feature. So, Tracy, as we talk to a lot of clients and a lot of discussions happen, obviously some questions are around security, data security, what happens to my data and stuff like that. You want to throw some light on what kind of questions we are getting there, and what kind of things people are concerned about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there are articles out there, and people are worried about this where, when their employees are using ChatGPT directly, they're sending companies' data to ChatGPT or OpenAI. And so the
Mhm,
question is always, what are you doing with my data?
mhm,
Who is viewing my data? And is it
mhm,
being used to train AI models?
mhm,
So we put a lot of layers in place, a lot of security in place to address this, and to make sure that the data is secured, because we are SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. Client's data is theirs. It's in their tenant. It's not used to train any AI models. So it's a different way. Even with companies that say that they integrate with ChatGPT, you got to make sure that the guardrails are in place to make sure that the data is secure for clients.
and Josh, from a data security perspective, aren't you using not the ChatGPT APIs, but the direct Azure APIs? Isn't it true?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we do, right? One is that we use an enterprise version of an Azure API that hooks into OpenAI, right? So we're not um, directly connected to the ChatGPT API, and that allows us to have all the governance and compliance rules around OpenAI that you would see when you're using Azure typically, right? Another thing that's important to note is we're not taking data and storing it in ChatGPT, right? Like ChatGPT cannot reach out and access your data. We can pass data to ChatGPT, right? And we do that on an as needed basis as questions are asked. And we've also got a layer in between, right? We've got what I guess best terms is a middleware where we can scan that for PII and personal information and company specific information that you don't want ChatGPT seeing. And we can remove that from the query before we send it. So we're not, when your employees are chatting with our bot, they're not chatting directly with OpenAI. It's not going directly there. There's several layers in between to where we can scan and remove that kind of data.
Mhm.
Which brings up another point. Is they don't even know where that data is coming from. As far as they're concerned, that's our data. They can't tie it back to your organization. It's coming from our IP addresses, our computers. On top of that, when you look at the enterprise version of OpenAI, there's a whole different terms and conditions set. They don't
Yep.
use it to train the data. They don't even store it, right?
Yep.
And you can even request, and we've requested and been approved that not even for compliance or monitoring reasons, right? There's no data stored. Once it's passed, it's gone,
Yep.
which is a lot different from if you just send your employees over there and start asking it questions.
Multiple lines of defense, right? And by the way, I just want to share this anecdote with everyone. You cannot just start using generative AI, like companies like ours which are now providing this option. You got to change everything, not only about your product but also contracts, right? So we have to get in touch with our lawyer, not chat gpt lawyer, real lawyer, and ask how do we change our contract, what back to back guarantees we give, stuff like that. So it's very interesting how we are literally watching a business model getting transformed with a new kind of technology, and it takes a lot to do that, which luckily so far we have been able to do very, very quickly and very safely. Couple of other things, Josh, one question that I want to ask, and this was a little bit of something that I also realized after a while, right? So we are in a generative boom right now. Everyone, I used to say this, that there was a time in, and this thanks to my gray hair, but There was a time in 2010 when everyone wanted to put mobile into their middle name. Everyone's middle name was Mobile, Manish Mobile Sharma, almost. If you go to LinkedIn, there was nothing which doesn't have mobile. There was a phase of digital. Everyone has digital. Manish Digital Sharma. That's what, almost my name was that back then. Then AI, and now generative AI, right? So everyone says they have generative AI. So I actually recently became aware through multiple conversations and multiple exposure that looks like it's not, it's a little bit different, right? It's not as simple as just connecting to the OpenAI API and you're done. There's something else, like you mentioned, to middleware. How does are all these solutions similar? Is it really no choice whether you buy from one or buy from another or implement one? Is there some qualitative difference that you're likely to see, and what kind of qualitative difference you're likely to see?
Yeah, there is a difference in the quality of answers you'll get and the level of service you'll be able to give, right? And that's just on the generative AI part. That doesn't even take into the automated solutions that can be tied into it and those different things, right? But focusing just on the quality of answers, there's, I mean, gosh, you can go to GitHub, you can search Google, and if you've got somebody that knows Python, you can hook into your documents and ChatGPT in a day, right? I mean, there's LangChain. That's a technology that a lot of people are utilizing. There's other open source type technologies that people are utilizing. When my team started looking at this, though, and really trying to figure out the best way to use it and to get the best answers, not to talk bad about competition. I hate doing that, but I was looking at the way it was done traditionally, the way it's been done for the last 2 years, how people do it, and I was like, man, this is dumb. I don't like it at all. It's not smart, right? It's very simple, and so we spent a good amount of time engineering our own way, right? We don't use Haystack, we don't use LangChain. That we're not just a simple hook into that stuff, right? We've developed technologies, proprietary technologies on our end that really break down, hey, what's the best way to split up these documents? You can't feed a 62-page document to ChatGPT. So how do we break this document up in a way that's best to get the best answer, right? And we kind of flip that on its head, and it's like, what's the best way to be able to ask a follow-up question and for it to be able to have context to the whole conversation, because we've still got to search the documents before that. And if you just say, what's that, as a follow-up question, and you go search the documents for what's that, they're not going to be relevant to the context of the conversation, right? So there's that's getting into it without giving too much secret sauce away. Manish is probably shaking his head at what I'm saying now, but yeah, there's a definitely a difference in the technologies versus kind of the open source libraries out there and what we've developed.
Yeah, and I would say that takeaway for a lot of people should be that not everything. Don't assume that if it's integrated with the OpenAI, everything else is same. Just don't assume that. That's not the case. Even I didn't know that, by the way, till 2 months ago. Initially, I thought once you connect to OpenAI, pretty much everything else should be the same, right? It's using the same. It's not. So that's something just to take away for some people here. I'm going to talk a little bit about now that we've talked a lot about generative AI, right? At general, we are going to go a little bit specific, right, in service desk. And what does a service desk reimagination looks like with with generative AI? So the way I look at service desk, by the way, if you want to draw very broad strokes, right, I put the service desk into three places, right? One is knowledge, second is your ITSM, and the third is integration and automation. These are the three big buckets for me. And by the way, people sometimes use different products for all three buckets, right? They might have a solution for knowledge, but it's different for ITSM, and third one for some RPA kind of solution for integration and automation, right? So there's a whole lot of configuration that you can do. And now, what is going to happen? Everyone imagines that the knowledge piece will be the obvious piece where generative AI will play a part, and obviously it will, right? No questions about it. But the implication of generative AI is also in core ITSM and integration and automation, and we'll talk a little bit about that. If you can go to the next slide, please. So, if you look at the traditional service desk and look at the amount of effort, how they spend the time, typically, we took a shot at, based on various data sources that we have and looking at the historical facts. This is how you can typically divide a service desk effort, right? Whether it's IT, mostly this for IT, but this is mid-sized to large company. This is what a service desk looks like. And as you can see, there are a lot of categories here which look, if you look at them and if you think, why are we doing it manually still, right? So this is, and by the way, because you do this in L1 and L2, L3, what you don't do is you don't spend enough time on the projects and initiatives, stuff like that. Those are the planned activities are the ones that suffer because you're spending so much time here. If you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So generative AI, therefore, is going to attack all those problems in following way, right? So one is knowledge management. We talked about that at depth. Imagine having a level 1 service desk agent equivalent of that knowledge available to you right away, right? Even before you upload your first document, you already will have a system that knows general IT knowledge, and then you can upload your knowledge and then it becomes your IT person, right? So that's one change. But what about conversational reporting? What if you say, hey, show me all the tickets which were which are open in so and so queue over last 1 month or last 5 days? Boom. Summarize for me the problems, majority of the problems that are happening in last 20 tickets, right? You're not going through the tickets, you're just telling the bot to summarize the information for you. How cool is that? How about if your bot can learn from the past tickets and past ticket resolution? So you are creating your own knowledge base by creating ticket resolution, and the bot is getting smarter. How about that? Or how about a smart routing of ticket? This is like perennial problem. All service desks have that, where the email comes and the ticket is generated but doesn't know where to go, right? And then someone has to manually touch it. Imagine that going away. Imagine bot asking follow-up questions about a problem without you even building any automation, right? Bot just asks a bunch of follow-up questions before it provides an answer. Imagine an email that you send out to service desk, but you get a very smart response back from service desk saying, hey, this is what we think you should be doing here, right? And I have not even gone in any system. I have not gone to Resolve.ai app in Teams or anything like that. I've just sent an email and I got a smart response. What about automatic identification of problem tickets, right? Tell me all the problem tickets for last 20 days. Tell me all the issues related to Outlook since 9 a.m., right? And create a problem ticket for that. Or giving a recommendation to the agent, saying, hey, technician, this is a ticket and this is what I recommend you to do it. It's up to you whether you do it or not, but here's my 2 recommendations that you can take in that order. So there are a whole lot of stuff going on here, which, by the way, we are going to introduce in sequences. So we have a pretty robust roadmap, and all the things that we're seeing here are coming one way or the other very, very soon. So the way the service desk look and feel today are going to entirely change in next 2 to 3 years, maybe sooner, right? Especially with company like ours, maybe sooner. But even if you look at industry at large, I'm sure once we do it, other people are going to follow as well. And the industry at large, I think, is going to change a little bit. Anything, Josh and Tracy? Josh or Tracy, want to add? Josh, maybe you can go first.
I mean, I think you did a really good job covering it. I'll just say that I'm excited about it. When you start thinking about all these possibilities, and I mean, the knowledge management problem that this solves on its own it's game changing, right? I mean, I think we all, I've been a service desk manager. I was a service desk manager for 5 years, and the hardest part of my job was creating self-service knowledge solutions, right, for people to look at. I just didn't have the time. We didn't have the time. And when we did, they are hard to find, right? You had to go out to, you had to go through several clicks on a SharePoint site to even be able to get to the documents. So the fact that you can take past interactions between a technician and an employee and infer solutions based off those and then present those is game changing. You're generating knowledge just by doing your job every day. And then you just see your job suddenly start to get easier over time as more and more information is gathered on the right things to fix. It's mind blowing. I get really excited about it.
And Tracy, I have a question for you in terms of automation, right? So the knowledge part, as Josh said, is very important, was very difficult, and was, I don't know why, but had to be repeated in each service desk, right? Each service desk manager had to literally rediscover the wheel over and over again, right? Now, but there's another angle, right? Knowledge can solve 20% of your problems, but when you want to solve more, you want to look at automation. So talk a little bit to us about automation aspect and the workflow and orchestration, and how does it connect, and where does generative AI come into that picture?
Yeah. So automation has evolved a lot, right? It used to take a lot of time, a lot of people, a lot of Visios and code in order to get done. And now, just with the new technology, it's a lot easier because systems are more connected through APIs. And with generative AI, you can remove a lot of the workflows that you had to pre-build beforehand. We before generative AI, we were building out workflows for when people have troubles with Outlook issues or printer issues. But now we don't have to do that anymore because those flows can be written, can be created more quickly through human language. So just imagine being able to build your process and your workflows by just telling the bot what it needs to be done, what needs to be connected with. Of course, that requires your system to be ready to make those connections. But, basically automation is going to be done a lot more quickly and more intuitively as we progress.
Manish, can I speak again on
Please.
that? I might have missed the boat on the question you're asking, but when you start thinking about process flows and building those kinds of things out, I think if you think of the chatbot from just even 2 years ago, right, and you've got a situation to where there's multiple different avenues that you can go down, or a lot of information that could vary based on a user's location or their job position or something like that, right? You might have, like Tracy said, a Visio that's forever long, and then you've got to go build this out in a low code automation studio, right? And which is great, but when you could take just that information and say, here's the information, you got to remember this is conversational. It's not just a one question and an answer. It can ask, like, what location are you in? That answer changes based on the location, or how many years have you been with the company? That answer may vary. Or if you want to do like a hardware procurement flow, do you know how those used to be? You can hook into an API, feed the information, get your inventory, feed that to the generative AI, and when someone says I need to order a new printer, it can say, okay, here's the 3 models we have available. They can ask questions that were never available before, like, well, what's the best printer for me? And they'll say, well, if you want fast printing, here's the best scenario. If you want quality printing, this is the best printer we have available. So yeah, I mean, it's a game changer. I wanted to take a second real quick to call out our comments section too, real quick, Manish. Sorry for interrupting you, but if you have any questions or comments that you'd like us to answer, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, so it's a good time to start getting those in there.
Cool. So let's talk about ROIs, payoff, because we are in 2023 and people are excited about it. But before, and a lot of people are, to be fair, are investing in it. There are a lot of CEOs, right? The funny thing is, I keep hearing that CEOs are telling everyone else, what are you doing about this, right? So it's the other way around. But let's say you have built a business case, or you are going down this path. What should you be watching for? Tracy, you want to weigh in on that a little bit?
Sure. So we know a lot of metrics in the service desk. Everybody knows about MTTR, first response time, SLAs, but not enough companies are tracking auto resolution because there are a lot of those manual, non-value added tasks that could be resolved. Giving people access to things. People shouldn't have to wait for somebody to look at that ticket and then work on it. They should be part of the automation. And getting answers to everyday things and not having it to ask in a specific way in order to get that answer, that's now available because of, the new technology. And so we really want to be more than just a ticket tracker. We go beyond that and, help you auto resolve issues in your service desk. And then the other aspect is for ROI is your employee and the employee engagement and their satisfaction with a lot of questions around how are my employees going to adopt this, because past technology have made it really hard for employees to want to chat with a chatbot. But now it's more conversational. It understands context more. It can get you information a lot quicker. So the aspect of satisfaction and productivity for employees also goes up with the new
Yeah,
technology.
and I would underline what you said there. It's so important, right? The auto resolution. If I go and ask 100 service desk managers, are you measuring auto resolution or auto deflection? Many might say no, right? Because they don't do that. What they track is agent productivity and SLAs and MTTR, and all that is very, very important. But I think a new metrics called auto resolution should be introduced now, because the world is changing and the technology is changing, and this is the metrics which will help you build your case right in front of everyone else within your organization. um, I want to ask, kind of reflect on one thing, because when changes happen, people say, what does it mean for us, right? That's a very important question too. And I've been getting some questions like this, and here is my sense, right? This is something that I've written about extensively in past as well. I think service desks are going to change in the scope of what they do. For example, service desk are not going to be just right now. Service desk are for issue resolution, right? You go to service desk when you have a service request, when you have incident, maybe change request, things of that nature. That's why you go there. But in future, service desk are not only going to do all this, but they're going to do it obviously very efficiently. They're going to use their extra bandwidth to become the automation hub for the enterprise, right? Just imagine an enterprise. Why would they spend a whole lot of dollars bringing external consultant to create automation, which their service desk managers can do? uh, Similarly, employee experience is another thing which I think more and more you will see, in my humble opinion, service desk managers elevating their positions and becoming also experts on employee experience. Because what is employee experience? Employee experience, to a large part, employee experience is related to service desk, HR, IT, finance, all kind of things where you have to interact with them. When you interact with enterprise knowledge, that is service desk experience, that is employee experience. And employee experience largely has been a role which didn't have any muscle to it, right? I'm sorry to say that, but the people who are in employee experience, domain, and you go and ask them, okay, who works for you? Do you have a budget? No and no. I'm an influencer, right? And that is a bad spot to be in. But if a service desk manager can also be employee experience manager, then I think they can make a whole lot of difference. So both for automation hub and employee experience, I think you are going to find service desk managers will increasingly become those, and service desk employees and technicians will start to take the role of internal automation experience, right? Any comment on that, Josh and Tracy?
Tracy, you want to take this one?
Oh, you can start.
Okay. I think the roles will definitely change, right? You're gonna it's gonna free up a lot of time. I know that you've heard that a lot in the past, but this is real, right? This isn't just a marketing scheme. This is actual real back technology. And so when you can take away the focus from your service desk employees, right, or even the managers, from answering those repetitive questions or generating knowledge articles to answer the repetitive questions. They're going to be able to focus on those more strategic tasks that you have at hand, right? There's projects that we all want to do. We've got all these great projects that we know would make our IT and our service desk team better, but we can't get around to them. Our time is spent doing cool things for the organization. We don't have time to do cool things for ourselves in our department, right? It's the biggest challenge, all these great ideas and no time to do them. And so when you can really take and free up a lot of that time, you're going to start taking their jobs from being very transactional, which is, I have a problem, here's the solution, to transformational, to where you're actually transforming the organization and the employee experience.
Absolutely. Um, Another thing that I, want to talk about was timelines, right? Like, so how long will this transformation take to come? So, I think of, three things: knowledge, process, and applications, right? So, knowledge transformation, I expect within next 6 months. A lot of people are already dipping their toe. Many organizations already running proof of value. There are so many organizations that actually just are asking for experiencing the technology firsthand. So I think broadly, forget Resolve.ai, even in a broad term, I think a lot of organizations are going to jump towards the knowledge component of the problem. And I think the timeline will be 6 to 12 months at the very most. That's what I think. But the process automation will come next, right? So once you have unlocked the knowledge, then you're going to say, okay, what else can I use the generative AI for? Can I automate my small process there, small process here? That will come next. And the timeline for that could be 18 months, 12 months, something like that. And then if you think of enterprise applications, right? These are very complex applications, whether it's HR, IT, your audit, there are thousands learning system, all of them will start. So we have been very quick to bring this to the market, but I don't think all the applications can do it that quick. It's complex, especially if you're working with the legacy product. It's not easy. So a lot of applications will take some time, maybe up to 3 years, to bring generative AI to the table. And what is likely to happen is that you might use a single interface to connect to all the applications instead of waiting for all these applications and softwares to come up with their own interface. That's also likely to happen. But if you look at this picture, the way I've broken it down, anywhere between 6 months to 3 years, you're likely to see different levels of automation, different level of generative AI applications coming into the picture for a small or big organization. Um, um, I have a couple of more topics that I wanted to ask you. Given this timeline is there, Tracy, what do you think is what do organizations need to do today to prepare for it? Right? Is there a baby step they need to take? Is there any prep they need to do if they are trying to go in this direction? What can they do?
Yeah. So I think about it in three different aspects. One is the knowledge aspect. So organizations who know, to where their source data will be coming from to build their knowledge base. They no longer have to input everything into a knowledge base. They just need to make sure that they have updated information in a certain spot where they know about that. People who are updating the knowledge are updating it. And then the other aspect is the process and systems, right? In order for the process automation to happen, you need systems to be able to talk to each other. And so, having legacy system is harder. If you have systems that have APIs that can be connected to one another, that would make process automation even easier and more intuitive. You'll be able to use generative AI to do process automation through that. And then think about your generative AI examples in your workplace, whether it be, do you want the AI to suggest resolution response for you, or do you want it to help you write a knowledge article in seconds? Think about those use cases you have in-house that can help with the auto resolution and the productivity aspect of your company.
Cool. Josh, anything you want to add here before we jump into the demo?
Yeah, just a quick little blurb. I think this might not be a timeline, but maybe a roadblock to a lot of organizations is just trust, right? There's a lot of distrust when it comes to generative AI. I think you see on the news all the time. I don't watch the news very often. The one day I did choose to watch it, it was 4 hours on how scary AI is and what Washington, D.C. needs to do to jump in and fix it. And if you guys are anything like organizations I've worked for, I know your legal and compliance teams are already like, don't let your employees use this technology, right? And it's the trust factor is going to be a big thing. And I'm here to tell you, don't let this pass you by. It's not going away. And organizations that choose to use it are going to be very successful, right? We've got the guardrails in place. We've got the compliance. We've got all that stuff figured out for you. You don't have to figure it out. It's not scary. It's just useful. Don't let it pass you by. It's a cool technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's out there, so there's no denying that. We are approximately at 50-minute mark, which is, I didn't know. I mean, I should have known. Whenever three of us sit down, we talk too much. So that part I should have guessed. But why don't we show, Josh, I don't know how long a demo do you have in plan, but You want to take like 5 minutes or something like that? That'll give us 5 more minutes for Q&A towards the end, if there are any.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get my screen sharing going. Tracy normally does the demos too, guys. So if I mess this up, it's forgive me. All right, so this will be a demo of a bot that we've built in Resolve AI. It's Sherlock Holmes, but mixed with generative AI, so it's kind of creative. That's what this image is back here. And you can see it's hosted in Microsoft Teams, right? So when you start thinking about compliance and things of that nature, you can have logs of all these conversations. You can monitor them, you can flag them within your own organization. It's right in Microsoft Teams. So this bot specifically, it's trained on 3 different data types. It's trained on human resources to answer human resources questions. It's trained to answer general IT questions, and it's trained on our compliance documentation. So I'll just start by asking a simple question, which is how many vacation days am I entitled to if I've been here for 5 years? When you think about generative AI, it's not an immediate answer. It thinks, I shouldn't use the word thinks, but it mimics it.
Maybe
right?
The answer is generate. It actually generates the answer.
Right. So you can see here that we asked how many vacations am I entitled to if I've been here for 5 years. And it says, based on the information provided in the document, if you've been with the company for 5 years, you're entitled to 20 days of vacation per year. And what we've done is we've actually sourced the document here. We've told you that this is document from your these are documents from your company, right? If this had been from an external data source, maybe some online website that you trust, that you want to supplement your in-house data, it would tell you. So you can say, this is your internal document. You can trust it. This is correct. And then you can click on it, and you can actually see where it got that information from in the document. So this is titled an AI ITSM company. It's a company we made up. We made a bunch of HR documents for it. And this is the exact text that it pulled that answer from, right? So it's got the accruals based on 10 years, 15 years, 5 years. It's able to answer your question very specifically. It says, if you've been here for 5+ years, it didn't give you a whole answer based on all the days where you've got to sort through the data and find it, right? So we sourced thousands of documents, 3 different data sources, data types, for example, departments, and we were able to deliver this accurate answer in about, 5 seconds?
That's amazing. That's just amazing.
Yeah, and there's a link to the source document as well.
Yeah, exactly. You can actually click on this link and it'll open the source document to your internal data source, right? Another thing that we do is for every conversation that you have, this isn't a good example because it answered the question really well, but we're going to do a knowledge gap analysis on it. We're going to say, hey, this answer was good, but it could have been better if, right? And if there is room for improvement, which in this situation there wasn't, it gave the right answer, we'll actually recommend content. We'll generate an answer for you, and then you can choose to edit it and review that information, and then publish it. That way, the next time that question's asked, you've got the correct answer. That knowledge gap is closed. So when you start thinking about knowledge management, you think back in the day, long knowledge articles, and now because we can take, I think this answer probably looked at thousands of documents, right? And if it would have been across multiple documents, it could have formed an answer from 5 of them. So when you can start taking pieces of data and forming one single answer based off that, you don't have to do long knowledge articles anymore. So we can do bite-sized knowledge content recommended, and you can publish it and grow your knowledge with every single conversation that you have. We gauge the accuracy, the comprehensiveness, and the relevance to the user's question for every answer too, right? And this is all available in analytics.
That's just amazing. That's so I know this. It's not new to me, but every time I look at it, I fall in love with it. This is what and smart solution looks like.
Yeah, I mean it's different than anything you've ever seen. It's absolutely game changing. I kind of pioneered it for us, right? And it blows my mind every time I ask a question, which gets to one of the questions in the Q&A that we'll answer. So we'll keep this demo short. Just because we talked a whole lot. We'll give you an example of so this is citing multiple sources that we trust, right? And you can see that these are labeled external sources. These are not your company's documents. These are external sources. We said my video is freezing in Microsoft Teams. It says if your video is freezing in Microsoft Teams, and it gives the answer, and it cites the text, the sources, right? And tells you exactly what you should do. I'm going to end the demo there, just because we don't have much time for questions and answers.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot more to know. How does it trigger automation, workflows? We can have a more detailed discussion either next, or people can just go ahead and book a meeting with us. Either one will work. I think with that being said, we are going to wrap up. There is Tracy, if you don't mind, put that slide around. If people book meeting, I think there's something going on where if you book a meeting by tomorrow, by tomorrow, which is the end of this month, then you get a 20% discount on any implementation fee that we will. If you end up going an implementation, then you get 20% off on the implementation fees. So it's a pretty cool deal. If you want to, go ahead and book a meeting. If there are any questions, happy to take them. Otherwise, we have 3 minutes out, and then we are going to switch it off.
Yeah, I see a question. Manish, you want to?
If the bot remembers any generic knowledge of ChatGPT. So I think the question is if there was a generic knowledge of ChatGPT, right? So everything that it remembers, is there a way for it to forget, right? So I'm assuming, Josh, you want to take that?
Yeah, so the technical answer for that is no. There's not a way to make it forget the data, because it's trained on that, right? It's taking that content and generating new content based on it. If it forgot the data, then it wouldn't know how to type an answer. It wouldn't know how to work. Right. So the technical answer is no, there's no way to make it forget its training data. Now, our answer is we can make it think it forgot its training data. Right. And I won't get too far into that because it's kind of a proprietary piece of what we do. But yeah, we can have the bot not answer questions based on its own training and only answer questions based on your documentation. If it doesn't know the answer, it'll start the process of creating a ticket. That's one part in the demo I didn't get to demonstrate, which I'm upset about because it's pretty cool. But the technical answer is no, you cannot make it forget its data. Our answer is yes, we can make it forget its data.
Cool. All right. Fantastic. I think we are pretty much out of time at this point of time. So I'd like to thank everyone who joined this cool webinar. And Josh and Tracy, thank you so much for being here today with me. This topic is so dynamic, so interesting that we could have gone for another hour, and especially between three of us, we could have gone for another 3 hours. But I think it's time to say goodbye to everyone, and I thank you. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.